European policy in the field of languages. Each member state has its own national policy. We have official languages, we have working languages, we have minority languages, and this is indeed a most delicate subject. I proposed another amendment, and with your approval, I'd like to make an oral amendment to the original amendment. Namely, I said that when it comes to intellectual property rights in the information society, unfortunately, because we have the 9 exceptions interpreted differently by the member states, now we've come to the point where in certain countries we have a body of law that deals with similar cases in different fashions, a manner that differs from one state to another, but the companies are multinational. So in order to have a certain legal certainty, I suggested a review of the directive concerning intellectual property rights in the information society. Obviously, I will make an oral amendment in this respect, and it would basically reflect the wording that we agreed upon when we talked about an agreement between Parliament and Commission. We voted on that agreement before we voted for the new European Commission. So we want to make sure that we included the respected right to initiative of the new European Commission. Beyond that, together with the rapporteur, I think we managed to draw up some compromise amendments which ensure the protection of user rights and at the same time do not take us back to chapters such as those concerning the regulations in the telecom field. But we nevertheless stated there that user rights in the information society must be protected, so consumer security, but also the access to confidential personal data and the protection of private life. Thank you.
Thank you
very much, Mr. Karin.
Chairman, thank you. Can I first of all thank our colleague Mr. Rubik for all the work that he's put into this. It is a very difficult subject to try and provide some sort of legislative framework for. And indeed, I think in this parliamentary term it's going to be one of the very big challenges that this House faces. Many colleagues are engaged on the issue in several committees, and it's very difficult trying to provide a legislative framework for a subject area that keeps evolving at a tremendous pace, and the goalposts keep moving. So we as a House, I believe, have got to take this issue on as wide a basis as we possibly can, and to try and provide a legal framework which isn't outdated on the day that we finalise it. The legal framework itself in many ways needs to be a framework which can evolve with changing circumstances as much as is possible. So I do recognise the great difficulty that rapporteurs have in trying to produce an effective piece of work in this way. And I can say that I congratulate Mr. Rubig, and I agree with the overall stance that he has taken and put forward to us. There are only 2 or 3 things that I wish to raise in relation to some of the amendments that have been moved and we will vote upon. Amendment 5 seeks to draw a differentiation between commercial counterfeiting and non-commercial counterfeiting. I have to say that this is quite, to my mind, an artificial distinction that is being drawn and complicates rather than adds to the work that we have to do. We've got to deal with the issue of counterfeiting, piracy, in whichever way or form that it should raise itself. Of course, different approaches, but to try and draw this sort of distinction, I'm afraid, doesn't really move matters forward for us. Moving on then to Amendment 25, I accept that, yes, of course, we must try and start moving towards a much more harmonised system and eventually a fully harmonised system. But I would also caution against trying to move too quickly at an artificial pace towards some form of immediate harmonisation. And I do echo what has been said by my colleague who spoke just before me, that there is a need for full evaluations and impact assessments to be carried out. Because it's only by doing that that we get a full understanding of where we are at this moment in time and what is likely to happen in terms of technological advancements in the coming weeks, months and years, because the speed at which the technology is moving to help people carry out the infringements, it's just absolutely amazing the pace at which it's moving forward. So I think that's absolutely essential that we do that. And then finally, it's an amendment that I've moved, Amendment 15, where I've asked for effective actions as opposed to effective sanctions. That's not because I have anything against sanctions per se. My rationale behind that is that by using the word actions, we are actually not only allowing room for sanctions, but actually being proactive as well in ensuring that we create the right sort of environment to allow industry to move forward as well. If I can give a very small example, I very recently met with the respective body that deals with copyright and infringement issues for artists in the United Kingdom. And they were informing me that so many of, or literally all, of the commercial transactions, the counterfeiting, takes place via credit card issues. Now, there is much that we can do in terms of actions to try and help curb that sort of use of financial facilities by people to carry out this sort of quite clearly wrong and in many cases criminal activity. So purely sanctions in themselves aren't enough. It's not wide enough. I do believe we need to be able to do actions as well as maintaining the sanctions aspect of it. There is quite some way to go. We're at the early days of what we're doing here. But I think really that there is a need to try and put in place a framework which encourages industry to go away and do much more to help itself, but also to work with us as well. Once again, I underline the fact that I do think we need further evaluation and impact assessment as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Bedanke mich herzlich.
Thank you very much, colleague Ensho.
Mulțumesc, domnule președinte.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to welcome Mr. Rubik's report, as well as the initiative of Parliament to strengthen the application of intellectual property rights. This is a very important topic, and it raised a lot of debate, which has not yet finished, and it might continue even after we will have approved this report. I would like to refer to one aspect alone, because I have a point of view to defend, concerning the fact that Internet service providers must not be held responsible, in any case, for actions of their customers, and they must not be obliged to take up monitoring activities for the traffic on their networks. I feel this is very important, and I talked to representatives of many associations, and I support this point of view. Thank you.
Angelika Niebler.
Angelika Niebler. Thank you, Chairman. I would also like to make 3 comments. But first of all, I would like to start by thanking colleague Rubik for the excellent opinion. I think that he has highlighted the issues which are important, those which are particularly relevant to our committee, and I would fully support the essential points that he has raised. First of all, the one-stop shop. So this would be a way of facilitating EU-wide licensing options. So that would be a single contact. I think that is the right approach. And I think that we should support that wording, because in its communication from September, the Commission had a different position